Go.
Okay. Is the mic enabled? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone.
Welcome back to Education Platform.
Before we begin with the lessons we have for you today,
We'll be taking a verse. We'll be reading a verse from the Bible.
which is taken from Psalms 34, verse 1.
I.
It states that, as it states, I will extol the Lord at all times. His praise will always be on my lips. I will glory in the Lord. Let the afflicted hear and rejoice.
Glorify the Lord with me. Let us exalt His name together.
I sought the Lord, and He answered me.
He delivered me from all my fears.
Those who look to Him are radiant.
Their faces are never covered with shame.
The word of the Lord.
Amen.
Now, first on Education Platform, for all you new subscribers, we're going to be telling you a story about Kaladi's quest.
Kaladi's Quest by Teresa Bateman. Teresa Bateman is an educator and author. In this story, a young girl named Kaladi goes on a quest, or a long journey, searching for the most important thing in the kingdom. Kaladi hadn't intended to go on a quest. When her father, the king, announced that a quest would determine which of his children would be the next ruler, Kaladi had known her older brothers, the twins, would compete for the prize. Richard and Derek soon galloped off, each searching for the most valuable thing in the kingdom. Everyone waited, wondering who would win. But when weeks had passed with neither twin's return, Kaladi knew something was wrong. She searched her brothers' rooms for clues. After determining where each brother had gone, she told her lady-in-waiting about her plan and slipped out of the castle to find Richard and Derek. Kaladi first rode in search of the waters of healing, Richard's goal. She'd read that those who failed a test at the waters turned to stone. But what was the test? She came upon a beautiful garden, and leaning against a tree, a flask at his lips, was Richard, still as granite. Kaladi sighed. Whatever the test was, Richard must have failed it. A sign by the water said, "Know thyself." What did that mean? Kaladi had read about a lady who'd used these waters to save her sons, and about a knight who had healed a sick friend. Kaladi suddenly knew what to do. She scooped up some water and dripped it onto her brother's lips. He blinked. How? "Know thyself," she said. "You can take the waters only to help someone else, not yourself." She filled her brother's flask. "Here's your treasure. Because I dipped it for you. It should be safe to take. Now, let's hurry. I think Derek is facing a dragon." They rode east until they arrived at Dragon Crest. A mountain rose in the distance. After climbing most of the night, they reached the dragon's cave. "Stist," a whisper came from nearby. It was Derek, one leg wrapped in a red, soaked cloth. In his lap was a battered crown. "It's a great treasure," Derek explained. "The dragon had stolen it from Bernard the Bold. I took it from the dragon, but he nearly caught me." He pointed to his leg. "Do you have water?" Richard smiled and offered his flask. At the first drops, Derek's leg began to heal. "This is wonderful," Derek said. "But now you're trapped as well. The dragon believes you're alone and hurt." "That's no longer true," Kaladi pointed out. She looked at her brothers, their faces as alike as two sides of a rainbow. "What's more, books I've read say dragons are easily confused. If you make them dizzy enough, they'll sleep for a solid week. Here's my plan." Her brothers were skeptical at first, then began to grin. At dawn, Richard climbed down the mountain and yelled, "Hey, dragon!" A roar came from above. The dragon took wing. "Over here!" Derek shouted from the mountaintop. The dragon bellowed. His treasure was in danger. He flew back to the cave. But wait. Who had the crown? Now there were two men, both exactly alike and neither one injured. Back and forth, The dragon swooped as the brothers called. The dragon's head twisted this way and that, and as he spun, he grew dizzier and dizzier until his eyes crossed. He dropped to the ground and fell asleep. Derek and Kaladi joined Richard, and they all embraced before starting the long journey home. A few days later, they rode into the castle courtyard. Once everyone had celebrated and his children had rested, the king asked about their quests. Richard pulled out the flask. "These are the waters of healing," he said. "I used them to mend Derek's leg." The king nodded. Impressive. Derek handed the crown to his father. It belonged to Bernard the Bold and saved Richard's life by distracting the dragon. "This was once used to crown new rulers," the king said. "But its worth increases if it saved your brother's life. It will be hard to choose between you." "You haven't asked Kaladi," Richard pointed out. "She's been a questing too," said Derek. The king smiled. "What treasure do you bring?" he asked, looking at his daughter's empty hands. "She brings me," Richard said, stepping to Kaladi's side. "And me." Derek joined them. "Her knowledge saved us both." "Well," said the king, "I suppose the question is, what do I value most? Healing waters, a battered crown, or my sons safely home?" He turned to Kaladi, placing the crown of Bernard the Bold on her head. "Truly, nothing is of more value than those we love."
Okay, that was a great story. Now, next on Education Platform, we're going to be reading you a speech, which was written by
John F. Kennedy.
"Race to Space" by President John F. Kennedy in 1962. As it starts, John F. Kennedy, in 1917 to 1963, served as the 35th President of the United States. He was president during the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Civil Rights Movement, and the beginning of the U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War. Kennedy was assassinated on November 22, 1963. He delivered this speech about space to a large audience at Rice University in Houston, Texas, on September 12, 1962. A year earlier, a Russian had become the first human ever to orbit the Earth. By 1969, Americans succeeded in being the first to walk on the moon. And also, the very first man to walk on the moon was Neil Armstrong. Now, by reading the speech. Sir, Mr. Vice President, Governor, Congressman Thomas, Senator Wiley, and Congressman Miller, Mr. Webb, Mr. Bell, scientists, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen.
I appreciate your president having made me an honorary visiting professor, and I will assure you that my first lecture will be very brief.
I am delighted to be here, and I'm particularly delighted to be here on this occasion.
We meet at a college noted for knowledge, in a city noted for progress, in a state noted for strength, and we stand in need of all three. For we meet in an hour of change and challenge, in a decade of hope and fear.
In an age of both knowledge and ignorance, the greater our knowledge increases, the greater our ignorance unfolds.
Despite the striking fact that most of the scientists that the world has ever known are alive and working today, despite the fact that this nation's own scientific manpower is doubling every 12 years in a rate of growth more than 3 times that our population as a whole.
Pitzer was president of the Rice University at that time. Working today, despite the fact that this nation's own scientific manpower is doubling every 12 years in a rate of growth more than 3 times that of our population as a whole. Despite that, the vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrips our collective comprehension.
No man can fully grasp how far and how fast we've come, but condense, if you will, In 50,000 years of man's recorded history in a time span of but half a century, stated in these terms, we know very little about the first 40 years, except at the end of them, advanced man had learned to use the skins of animals to cover them. Then, about 10 years ago, under this standard, man emerged from his caves to construct other kinds of shelters. Only 5 years ago, man learned to write and use a color wheel. Energy began less than 2 years ago. The printing press came this year, and then less than 2 months ago, during this whole 50-year span of human history, the steam engine provided a new source of power.
Newton explored the meaning of gravity. Last month, electric lights and telephones and automobiles and airplanes became available. Only last week did we develop penicillin and television and nuclear power. And now, if America's new spacecraft succeeds in reaching Venus, we will have literally reached the stars before midnight tonight.
This is a breathtaking pace, and such a pace cannot help but create new ills as it spells old. New ignorance, new problems, new dangers. Surely the opening vista of space promise high costs and hardships, as well as high reward.
So it is not surprising that some would have us stay. Where are we no longer to rest, to wait? But the city of Houston, the state of Texas, this country of the United States was not built by those who waited and rest and wished to look behind them. This country was conquered by those who have moved forward, and so will space.
William Bradford, speaking in 6030 at the beginning of the Plymouth Bay Company, said that all great and honorable actions are accompanied with great difficulties and must be enterprised and overcome with inseparable courage.
Okay? If this capsule's history of our progress teaches us anything, it is that man, in his request for knowledge and progress, is determined and cannot be deterred. The exploration of space will go ahead, whether we join it or not, and it is one of the great adventures of all time. And no nation which expects to be the leader of other nations can expect to stay behind the race for space.
Those who came before Those who came before us maintained that this country rode the first waves of industrial revolutions, the first waves of modern invention, and the first wave of nuclear power, and the generation does not intend to founder in the backwash of the coming age of space. We mean to be a part of it. We mean to lead it, for the eyes of the world now look into space. To the to the moon and the plains beyond, and we have vowed that we shall not be governed by a hostile flag of conquest, but by a banner of freedom and peace. We have vowed that we shall not seize space filled with weapons of mass destruction, but with instruments of knowledge and understanding.
Yet the vows of this nation can not only be fulfilled if we in this nation are first, and therefore we intended to be the first. In short, our leadership in science and in industry, our hopes for peace and security, our obligations to ourselves as well as others, all require to make this effort to solve these mysteries, to solve them for the good for all men. The world's leading spacefaring nation.
We set sail on this new sea because there is knowledge to be gained and new rights to be won. They must be used and they must be won and used for the progress of all people. For space science, like nuclear science and all technology, has no conscience of its own. Whether it will become a force of good or ill depends on man. And if only the United States occupies a position of prominence, can we help decide whether this new ocean will be a sea of peace or a terrifying theater of war? I do not say that we should or will go unprotected against the hostile misuse of space any more than we go unprotected against the hostile use of land or sea. But I do say that space can be explored and mastered without feeding the fires of war, without repeating the same mistakes that man has made and extended his reach around the globe of ours.
There is no strife, no free justice, no national conflict in outer space as yet. Its hazards are hostile to us all. Its conquest deserves the best of all mankind, and its opportunity for peaceful cooperation may never come again. But why? Some say the moon. Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas?
Chose to go to the moon. We chose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because our goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one what we are willing to accept and one we are unwilling to postpone, and which we intend to win, and the others too.
It is for these reasons that I regard the decision last year to shift our efforts in space from low to high gear as among the most important decisions that will be made during my incumbency in the office of presidency. In the last 24 hours, we have seen facilities now being created for the greatest and most complex exploration in man's history. We have let the ground shake and the air shattered by the testing of a Saturn C-1 booster rocket, many times as powerful as the Atlas, which launched John Glenn, generating power equivalent to 10,000 automobiles with their accelerators on the floor. We have seen the site where five F-1 rocket engines, each one as powerful as eight engines of the Saturn combined, will be clustered together to make the advanced Saturn missile, assembled in a new building to be built at Cape Canaveral, as tall as the 48-story structure, as wide as a city block, as long as the two lengths of this field.
Within these last 19 months, at least 45 satellites have circled the Earth. Some 40 of them were made in the United States of America, and they were far more sophisticated and supplied far more knowledge to the people of the world than those in the Soviet Union.
And that's the John F. Kennedy speech so far. We're going to be reading to you guys the rest of the John F. Kennedy speech next live stream. Now we're moving on to our next lesson, which is about the solar eclipse.
The solar eclipse. A solar eclipse occurs when the moon blocks out the sun. A solar eclipse happens 2 or 5 times every year.
The importance of eyesight during the solar eclipse. When looking directly at the sun, it can hurt your eyes and can mess up your eyesight. So it's best if you wear special glasses in order to see. Because the solar eclipse is very it can be very irrational to your eyes. So it's make sure to wear special glasses in order to see the solar eclipse.
Stage fighting.
Our next lesson, which as Derek said, is stage fighting. Now, what is stage fighting? Stage fighting is a specialized technique in theater designed to create the illusion of physical combats.
Without causing harm to the performers, it is employed.
In live stage play, as well as operatic and ballet productions. As you've seen from the sounds, it's ethics. When you're stage fighting, people miss and then play a sound effect as it's being heard. Okay, now moving on with our well, before we're moving on with our next lesson, we're going to be reading you the verse of the day, number 2, which is taken from Nahum chapter 1, verse 3. And it states that the Lord is patient, but he is also very powerful.
Like the Lord will punish the guilty. He will not let them go free. He will use what what whirlwinds and storms to show his power. People walk on the dusty ground, but he walks on the clouds.
As he always will. The word of the Lord. Our next lesson is about the Sao Paulo Museum of Art, also known as MSAP, or MSAP. The Sao Paulo Museum of Art was founded in 1947 by Assis Chateaubriand and Pietro Maria Bardi. It was the first modern museum in Brazil. The museum is a non-profit institution that has been involved in art education and museology initiatives in Brazil. It also acts as a cultural carrier. The museum's building was designed by Lina Bo Berti and is a landmark of modern Brazilian architecture. The building is made of glass and concrete beams that rest on huge piers. The building is elevated 8 meters, also known as in the amount of measurements, is 226.2 feet above the ground on substantial red pillars. It is located on Sao Paulo's Paulista Avenue. The museum's unique feature is that its clear distinction of art and music about Brazil and the rest of the continent. It's also been involved in several important initiatives concerning museology and art education in Brazil. Our next lesson is a review about the first Prime Minister of the Bahamas. As some Bahamians know, the first Prime Minister of the Bahamas was Sir Lyndon Pindling. He served as the first black premier of the colony of the Bahamas Islands from 1967 to 1969 as Prime Minister of the Bahamas from 1969 to 1992. And it was also the airport in the Bahamas was also named after him. And his picture can also be found on the $1 bill. Our next lesson is about one of the Supreme Court cases, which is
Dred Scott versus Sanford was a landmark decision of the United States Supreme Court that held the U.S. Constitution did not extend American citizenship to people of black African descent.
as it's shown in the Dred Scott political cartoon, that it didn't extend it much in the black African descent, as it's shown, the Dred Scott snake. Now, our next lesson is about the French Revolution, and that's something that not many people talk about, but for many reasons. Now, what we know about the French Revolution. The French Revolution was a period of political and social upheaval in France.
And its colonies from 1789 to 1799.
The revolution began with the Estates General of 1789 and ended with the formation
of the French consulate in November 1789.
And now, our last lesson is about the food pyramid. The food pyramid is a diagram that shows from the predator all the way to the prey. And as it's shown in tropic level 1, the producers, which are the plants, has 10,000 kilometers. But when moving up to level 2, it now has 1,000 kilometers. When moving up to 100 kilometers in level 3, and then it decreases from level 4 to 10 kilometers. The reason that it's decreasing is that when the predator eats its prey, and then the predator gets eaten by the other predator, which becomes its prey, it can easily decrease by the amount of animals still left, or the amount of living things. Okay, before we go, make sure to click our WhatsApp button so you can text and message us on WhatsApp at 407-906-3218, and also make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube, and also to make sure to like, comment, and share with us on Facebook, and make sure to also to like, share, and comment on Instagram, and also do the same on Twitter. And if you want to join our online classes, there's a link in the description, or you can put in the code, which is shown. Now, thank you all.
And have a wonderful day. Stop stuttering, my man. Wait, weren't we supposed to do the piano part? Oh, you forgot.
Yeah, but it's just a recording.
How far does this wire Okay, so
Wait, whoa. Wait, it's